The betrayal of Banu Qurayza, a historical context. What happened today? The Israeli army's destruction of all life along the Netzarim axis is a continuation of the nature of the Israelites throughout history, reflecting the conduct of their forefather, Khaybar ibn Saad al-Qurayza. In the 5th year of Hijra, Quraysh, Ghatafan, and various Arab factions launched a major military campaign against the Muslims in Medina, known as the Battle of the Confederates, Al-Azab, or the Battle of the Trench. The city was fortified with a trench dug by the Muslims on the advice of Salman al-Farsi, effectively thwarting the enemy's attacks. Amid this intense siege, Banu Qurayza's treachery emerged. Although they were bound to the Muslims by a formal pact, they violated their covenant under the influence of Huyay ibn Akhtab, the leader of Banu al-Nadir, and allied themselves with the Confederates. This betrayal posed a grave threat to Medina from within. This act of treachery was not an isolated incident, but rather a recurring pattern in Israelite history, reflecting a deeply ingrained tendency to break treaties and betray alliances. Stay tuned for the full historical account. To 3 major Jewish tribes. Banu Qurayza, exiled from Medina after the Battle of Badr. Banu al-Nadir, expelled following their attempt to assassinate the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Banu Qurayza, the last remaining Jewish tribe in Medina. Banu Qurayza were allies of the Muslims under the Constitution of Medina, which ensured peaceful coexistence among all communities. However, during the siege of Al-Azab, their leader, Khaybar ibn Saad al-Qurayza, violated this pact under the influence of Huyay ibn Akhtab, the leader of Banu al-Nadir, who convinced him that the Muslims would soon be defeated. The betrayal of Banu Qurayza, how the Muslims almost faced a treacherous attack from within. Imagine being in a decisive battle, surrounded by enemies who have united against you, only to discover that one of your closest allies has betrayed you at the worst possible moment. This is exactly what happened to the Muslims during the Battle of the Confederates. Khaybar ibn Saad, the leader of Banu Qurayza, secretly conspired with the Confederates and opened the way for them to attack the Muslims from within. Suddenly, the Muslims found themselves facing a double threat: an external enemy and an internal betrayal. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, sent a group of companions, led by Saad ibn Muadh, to investigate. They returned with alarming news. Banu Qurayza had broken their pact. But despite this, the Muslims did not collapse. Thanks to their resilience and the strategic genius of Nuaym ibn Mas'ud, who sowed distrust among the Confederates, division spread among their ranks. Their alliance crumbled, and they were forced to withdraw without achieving their objective. This is how the Muslims survived one of the greatest conspiracies in Medina's history. But what happened to Banu Qurayza next? Stay tuned to find out. The Siege of Banu Qurayza. After the Confederates withdrew, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, immediately ordered his army to march toward the stronghold of Banu Qurayza, saying, "Let no one perform the Asr prayer except in Banu Qurayza." The Muslims laid siege to Banu Qurayza for 25 days. As desperation grew, the Jews attempted to negotiate, but the Prophet refused any terms except their complete surrender under Islamic rule. Realizing they had no other option, they finally agreed to surrender, on the condition that their fate be decided by Saad ibn Muadh, the leader of the AWS tribe, as they had been former allies of AWS. The verdict of Saad ibn Muadh on Banu Qurayza. After the surrender of Banu Qurayza, Saad ibn Muadh, the leader of the AWS tribe, was summoned to pass judgment on them, despite suffering severe wounds from the Battle of the Confederates. Carried on a stretcher, Saad addressed Banu Qurayza upon his arrival, asking, "Do you accept my judgment upon you?" They replied in the affirmative. He then turned to the Prophet Muhammad, "Peace and blessings be upon him," and asked, "And upon those present here?" Gesturing toward him, the prophet, "Peace and blessings be upon him," confirmed, "Yes." Saad then issued his decisive ruling. "Their fighters shall be executed, their women and children taken captive, and their wealth distributed." This judgment aligned with the prevailing tribal laws of the time and was carried out against Banu Qurayza, marking the final chapter of their betrayal during the siege of Medina. Execution of the judgment. The sentence was carried out against the men of Banu Qurayza, whose numbers ranged between 600 and 900, while their women and children were taken captive. It is reported that Khaybar ibn Saad al-Qurayza, their leader, realizing that death was inevitable, offered his people three choices. 1. To accept Islam and embrace the faith of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, but they refused. 2. To kill their own women and children and then fight to the death, but they rejected this as well. 3. To launch a surprise attack against the Muslims on a Saturday, yet they refused, unwilling to fight on the Sabbath. With no option left, Khaybar surrendered himself. When the time came for his execution, he tore his garments apart so that nothing of his would remain as spoils of war. This act exemplifies a historical pattern that persists to this day. When the Israeli army withdrew from the Netzarim axis and other areas, it did not simply retreat. Rather, it deliberately obliterated infrastructure and property, ensuring that nothing was left for those who would come after them, just as their forefather, Khaybar ibn Saad al-Qurayza, had done centuries ago. Consequences and aftermath. With the elimination of Banu Qurayza, no hostile Jewish force remained within Medina. Despite their past alliance with Banu Qurayza, the AWS tribe accepted the judgment, as it had been issued by their own leader, Saad ibn Muadh. Shortly thereafter, Saad ibn Muadh succumbed to his wounds from the Battle of the Confederates. Upon his death, the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "The throne of the most merciful shook at the death of Saad ibn Muadh." Conclusion. The Banu Qurayza affair was a pivotal moment in Medina's history, as it eliminated a serious internal threat and paved the way for stability. This newfound security later enabled the Muslims to expand, leading to the conquests of Khaybar and Mecca. If you want to learn more, follow us on our channel, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content.